Hello everyone, I'm Trent Bond. I'm the Head of Information Security and Privacy here at Pluralsight. These last few months have been anything but dull for many of us. World conditions amid COVID and work from home are really pressing businesses to relook at their digital transformation strategies and plans, and in many cases, accelerating them. I did a little bit of research to try to figure out what kind of predictions are being made amid all of these crazy changes that we're seeing in operating conditions. And what I found was the International Data Corporation came up with some predictions over the next several months. The first one that I'll draw your attention to is 60% of all businesses are looking at transforming the way that they handle their employee experiences. So these digital transformations aren't just looking externally at a business, they're actually looking internally as well. 75% of all businesses are re-looking at having a comprehensive digital transformation strategy by the end of 2023. That's only 3 years away, and not much time for people to come up with these strategies and actually have them be successful, and at the same time be competitive with other businesses that are in similar situations. Also, 30% of all businesses in the year 2021, amid all the crazy COVID work from home changes that we've all seen, are looking at accelerating their digital transformation next year. And then the number that I thought was most interesting, the prediction was that we would see close to $7 trillion spent and invested in digital transformation by the end of year 2023. That's only 3 years away, and for that much money to be invested in it is a crazy amount of money. Now, if you're one of these businesses that is looking at transforming, and maybe you're in the middle of it, maybe you're at the beginning and trying to look at your strategy again, no matter what area you're in, you're creating new experiences for your customers, you're creating new experiences for your internal employees, you're engaging with more software as you do these digital transformations, and you're future-proofing your business to be more competitive as you go forward. So really, congratulations, you're becoming a software tech company amidst this digital transformation. Before we get too excited though about becoming a software tech company, when I look around at how well we're doing from a security perspective with digital transformation, with what we've already done, things are definitely concerning. I looked very closely at this Microsoft Digital Defense report that just came out just a couple of months ago, along with some data that came from the Ponemon Institute. And when you think about phishing, so cyber criminals, 70% of them are focusing just purely on phishing. And you're like, Trent, why are you talking about phishing amid digital transformation? Well, if you think about it, think about all those new experiences, right? You got new platforms, you have new systems, you even have new applications that you're rolling out as part of your transformation. And every one of them have logins. Every one of them have an administrator on the back end of that. So as a cyber criminal, knowing that everyone's moving to this new digital world, right, with all these logins, why am I going to spend hour after hour after hour trying to come up with an exploit or creating some malware that I don't know if it's going to get caught or not by anti-malware systems, when I can just go phish someone to get those credentials to a system, use it to pivot and get a hold into the rest of the business. So I thought that was a really interesting statistic that came out of that digital defense report. And that, again, that's 70% of these cyber criminals are focusing just purely on the phishing aspect because they're being so successful now, and there's really no reason for them to think that they won't be successful as we move forward through that 2023 range that we saw with those predictions. Another really interesting number that came out of that digital defense report was 21,000 hours. This is, for an average business, average company that's going through a digital transformation, they're spending 21,000 hours, their security team, doing triage on false positives. That's an enormous waste of time, but we all do it. I do it. My teams do it. We have to. We have to look at all these events of interest to know whether or not we should respond and react. And so I thought that was a really interesting number. And when you see it 21,000, it's hard to ignore that we're spending that much time on it. Another statistic that came out of this report was 73% of all CISOs in the last 12 months reported that they had lost or leaked some sort of sensitive data. we're terrible at this. It's just not going well, like in a lot of ways. And there's really no reason to believe that as we start to digitally transform and move our businesses into more of a space that can be accessed, electronically, digitally, that we're not going to see more of this, a lot more of it. And then finally, the one that I would draw your attention to the most is you're becoming a tech company as you transform. Most of these software projects that you'll use to wire up your system to other systems, and that you'll use to provide you with the AI or the machine learning that you're after, a lot of that software that's used by your engineering team actually utilizes, each and every one of those small packages utilizes over 200 open source, free and open source packages that are maintained and stored outside of your company's control. And when you start to aggregate that number, it becomes a very large number. And again, we're only going to see this number grow as we digitally transform. So, as I look at the digital defense report from Microsoft here, I think about where we're going, and I think, wow, like that is, we're not doing awesome already, and we're gonna just enlarge the problem as we move forward. And so one of the strategies that's super critical, and you probably hear this all the time, is this idea of security by design. It can have a lot of meanings. But for me and my team, as we focus on our mission and our vision as a team, security by design means early. It means getting in on the digital transformation plans and strategies, the features, the enhancements, the software that's going to be used early. We all know how hard that is to try to bolt on security control capabilities after something's already been delivered. You're tearing off a roof, or you're pouring a new foundation for a home. That is very difficult to do after the house, of course, is already built. So for me, security by design means early. And now's the time. If your business is being pushed and pressed and it's accelerating its digital transformation strategy, like, you got to get in on that now and up front. So some key areas that I think about when we think about digital transformation and security by design, there's a million. You could go into any space, but 4 areas that I think we're overlooking when we try to get in there early with the business is around defense, assessment, monitoring, and of course the human system, which for whatever reason we always think of last. So on the first one, defense, there's probably a lot of good things that you're doing as it relates to defense already. You're probably thinking, oh, when we start to add these platforms and these systems, we have to do great network segmentation. We got to make sure that we're obviously separating our production environments from our test and dev environments, that we are obviously firewalling off our business corporate networks from our product and our services networks. We're probably thinking a lot about endpoint and API protection. We'll probably have good patching programs where we're out there trying to make sure that everything's up to date from a security perspective. Maybe we're not doing quite as well when it comes to application security patching, because that gets very difficult and we're not always aware. We don't have a Microsoft Patch Tuesday to remind us to do it. So there may be some, that may be hit and miss. And same thing with web app firewalls. But we all know that those are very mature control capabilities that we're thinking about. But as we move forward into 2023 and we're looking at digital transformation across our whole business, the one thing that I think we're missing on the defense perspective that we need to consider is a secure software development lifecycle, a secure SDLC. We might have an SDLC. You might have a really good cycle already defined. I mean, these are well-known, patterns that most engineering teams use. They, of course, get the requirements, they design, they develop, test, and then deploy, and then they just follow that cycle over and over. But I think we're missing the secure part of that. The security portion of it needs to be built and weaved into that life cycle. For example, when requirements come in, those requirements should be in a backlog. If those requirements came from assessments, like a penetration test, or from a bug bounty, or from your dynamic application security scanning, or even from your static code scanning, those bugs need to be, there needs to be severity set on them. They need to be prioritized in the backlog, by a product manager, and then approved and authorized. And not in a traditional way. Most engineering teams, as we look forward in the future, they're going to want to move very, very fast. Your business is going to want to move very fast. And how fast you can make these software changes is going to make a big difference in how competitive you are. So you can't have the waterfall approach to a bunch of approvals before the software goes out. Instead, it needs to be woven in to an SDLC, into a software development lifecycle, where those approvals and those authorizations happen as work is approved for the team to develop. Now, of course, the other backstop and the other end of that is with the penetration testing and the application security testing. All of that happens out there as the other bookend to that lifecycle. But and you'll think about and work through the details of how your team works and how your business works as you weave security into that lifecycle. But this will be a critical piece as we start to become tech companies, software tech companies. It'll be important to have the secure piece in front of that lifecycle. When I think about assessment, we've been doing this for many years now, decade or more, many of us in our businesses. And so this is really a mature space. We do perimeter scanning. We do scanning of our endpoints and our networks, of our applications, and hopefully of our code. We're looking for sensitive secret keys and code repositories. And heaven forbid that we find them in our G Suite, G drives, or something like that. But we're looking for them. And but I think that one of the places that we're probably going to overlook as we head into this transformation stage is around third-party software dependencies. Third-party software dependencies, like these are the open source software. That's the 200 that's part of every project that your team creates. And with every one of those, you're talking about these project the project managers that are managing these open source projects. They're not inside your business. They're somewhere else. The code itself is being stored on another platform, not inside your environment. There are likely, lots of people contributing, of course, to those projects. There's a whole lot of trust that's happening in these open and free and open source projects that our teams, our businesses are going to start utilizing a lot of. And that trust, I think, is only going to have to grow as we move forward in the future. So there are lots of, like GitHub, GitLab, Git, a lot of these repository providers are doing a great job of helping look at that open source code to identify vulnerabilities and let us know. But we, as a security team and organization, we have to be looking for that sort of stuff. Somebody needs to be pulling that information and that data down from these repo providers, looking at the data, and then surfacing it back to the engineering teams so that they know what to do with it. And I think this is one space, obviously, that we're really overlooking and something that needs to be looked at very closely because there are lots of vulnerabilities. In a 200 open source package set, you're going to have a few vulnerabilities in any of those open source dependencies that you're pulling in there. So somebody needs to be looking very closely at that as we move forward. When I think about monitoring, we're doing a great job. Again, very mature control capabilities around intrusion prevention and detection, threat intelligence. We even look for application anomalies. We have anti-malware that we have deployed everywhere. So we're collecting a lot of events and a lot of logs from a lot of different places. Here's the deal: like as we move forward with digital transformations, think about how much wider now that net is going to be and all the more events that you're going to have to start collecting. The thing that we're probably overlooking is that our analysts, our security engineers, and the people responsible for looking at all those events to identify what's happening, like there's going to be alert fatigue for sure. And dashboards are going to start turning red. We're actually going to miss the things that matter most when we move forward. And so, as I think about what we have to focus on, we have to focus on opening up, these patterns, these ML patterns, these AI patterns, so we can be better at alerting. There's no reason we can't create better automation. and that we can't actually do better post-breach reaction and alerting with our teams, them getting up in the middle of the night to make sure that our controls are working for a credential stuffing attack, those days are long gone. Like, we've got to move forward. And I don't go so far as to say that, security operations centers are no longer valuable. My hope is that we eventually get to the day when we have such good automation and control capability and monitoring that we don't have to have security operations center and people sitting in there night after night, but that we can move forward without that and know when we get an event that it is actually an alert that we need to pay attention to. And then finally, when I think about the last place that we'd probably be overlooking, I think about the human system. We have annual security awareness training. We do internal phishing campaigns. We probably hire great security engineers to conduct that training for us, even compliance engineers. Like, we're doing a good job across the human system, except for we're not. Like, we still have 70% of our cyber criminals focusing on phishing because we're clearly giving up those credentials way too often. So as I think about what we can focus on the human system side, I think about this mentality with our software engineers themselves, that you code it, you own it. And they're the ones that have to be there, be responsible to patch those open source dependencies, to be responsible to make sure that there are event and alerts built into the software that they're creating. Making sure that things are patched. You code it, you own it, I think is a tech culture thing that probably has to change as we go through this digital transformation. I also think about new organizations, right? Like security engineering, security operations, architecture. Like, those are very mature organization styles. But I think that the organization style probably has to upgrade as we move forward in the future. And we probably need to have more business partners in risk that we use to go out and collaborate with other parts of the business to help them prioritize the events, the alerts, the patching, the risks ultimately in their parts of the business. And I think that creating those cyber risk management arm inside a security organization will be a big thing that we start to see, especially as our landscape, as the footprint for our digital landscape continues to grow. And then the last thing I would just focus on is that I think we think about blast radius today when one individual, one person in a company is compromised, like, oh well, it's just their laptop, that they got ransomware or whatever, but there is actually a much wider blast radius when we look at it. This particular diagram here shows that blast radius for just an HR individual, and how that particular individual had access to many different systems, and it was read access, but we all know that read access is just as valuable as write access in many cases. And even with that read access, you can use it to create and craft additional phishing emails to other administrators to get those credentials if you know where to get them. So of course the blast radius becomes really important there. So just to recap, the 4 areas that I would focus on as we really accelerate this digital transformation over the next few years would be defense, assessment, monitoring, and then an upgrade in the human system and what we do there. And again, the whole idea is to do this by design and to get in early. And whether it's these 4 or another 10 that you focus on, security by design is critical, and it's important that we get in super early in all those processes. Okay, and if you would like to, if any of these topics are interesting and you wanted to learn more about it, you could visit the Pluralsight virtual booth or our Pluralsight platform. We have some really great resources in there on security development, risk management, security policies and standards automation on AWS for DevOps, as well as security event triage. All really great resources for you and your team as you guys look forward to helping your business succeed and be competitive as they digitally transform in the future. Thank you.